Okay, we got. Man, I can't beat it. She's way too fast. Hey, everybody, this is Kenny and
Kenny Squared.
with the Sports on the Positive Tip podcast. Kenny, it is Super Bowl week. This is exciting times, right? We hope that the Super Bowl could be even just a little bit like as exciting as those playoff games were. We're finally, past those playoff games. We've taken a breath now, but I can't wait. And it's going to be 86 degrees at game time in Los Angeles now, but they're inside, right? That's an indoor stadium.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's going on there in Cleveland, man? Exciting stuff with your Cavaliers, huh?
Yeah. I don't know if you saw this actually. The skills challenge. Well, the All-Star game's coming here in a couple weeks.
Right.
They have some fun stuff like downtown and everything. But the skill challenge they announced is going to be kind of a different format. 3 different teams. The Antetokounmpos, so Giannis and his 2 brothers. And then also there's a team of Cavs. I believe it's Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, and I forgot the other guy.
Mm-hmm.
But and then also a team of rookies. And they're going to be doing all the skills and kind of like accumulating points and stuff. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, I might actually watch some of that aside from the dunk contest. The last few years, I just kind of will turn late on Saturday night when I know the dunk contest comes on. Maybe I'll watch some of that. That's interesting. Yeah. Let's stay on that for 1 second. I'd forgotten it was in Cleveland. What type of response, and I know he's been back there obviously a lot of times since he left, but All-Star game now, they know everybody's watching. Does LeBron get, huge applause?
Yeah, I think it's a lot different from when he left to go to Miami.
Right.
I feel like there was a lot of bitterness. Shelby and her family moved here like that following like fall. So like right. Everyone hated him. There's all the burning of the jerseys. I think now because he's brought a title and everyone was kind of expecting him to leave this time, it's not as intense. So
yeah. It's always funny. I don't know if we ever mentioned it on a podcast, but we happened to be there when it came across, and it was we were up late for some reason, but it came across like a minute after midnight that he had signed with the Lakers, and you had announced it. I remember you saw it on your phone, and remember that next morning, that big mural downtown that leads into downtown that had the huge picture of him. Remember that next morning? I mean, we were out there pretty early because we went to that market, and they were painting over. They saw a million guys up there high on this thing painting over. They wanted to get his thing off there, but it wasn't as bitter on there. But it'll be interesting that he's back in the All-Star game. Hey, is the format still East versus West this year, or is it, mixed like it was last year?
It's still the same as last year where it's mixed.
Okay.
They do, I think it's probably going to be either this Thursday or next Thursday. They're going to do their the 2 different captains, which I believe is Durant and LeBron.
Right.
They're going to be drafting their team. So
okay.
Also, I don't know about the actual game itself, but I do know they have a new Kobe Bryant MVP trophy.
Right. Okay.
So,
and these last couple of years, especially this past year, they played really hard in that fourth quarter, which is kind of the winner take all, or so that'll be interesting to see. It actually got better these last couple of years. I was so disappointed in the NBA All-Star game. Hey, let's stay in the NBA for a second then, since we started talking about the NBA.
There's one more thing too. Do you see they completely revamped the Rising Stars Challenge?
Oh, okay.
It's 4 different teams of 7. They have like random captains. I don't know how they picked them, but they're doing like a mini tournament, and they're doing like up to a certain point total. I forgot what the point total is, but so that'll be interesting too. And it's like rookies, second year guys, and they also have a few people from the G League. So
okay. And that's typically like on that Friday night, right?
Yeah.
Friday night, yeah. I mean, they try to really make it a full, event for everyone, and I imagine there's events probably in downtown Cleveland, but I'm sure not this week, but probably going into the next week.
Oh yeah.
That's really interesting. Let's stay in the NBA because while your Cavs, I keep saying your Cavs, I know you're not a Cavs fan, but you're living there in Cleveland, so you got to follow them. While they're rising, and they made a big trade this week, Karis LeVert is one of those really underrated players who is just very, very good. And it's funny because I don't think the Nets have been the same since they made, with him and Dinwiddie and Jared Allen, guys that would just grind out players, that had kind of brought the Nets back a little bit, when they kind of moved all of them to get James Harden. They just haven't been the same team, even though they got to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. But let's start with the Nets, because while the Cavs and a few other teams really rising, the Nets, I think, is either 8 or 9 in a row. They've
9, yeah.
9 in a row now that they've lost. Now, I know Kevin Durant obviously being hurt, that's a big deal, but you still have James Harden, and on the road, you have James Harden and Kyrie Irving. How does this happen? What's going on, in your opinion, with the Nets?
I don't know. There's something off about James Harden. There was the whole rumblings that he might be traded. Obviously, the good fit of him going to Philadelphia, where Daryl Morey is, and then also them getting back Ben Simmons. Kind of, to me, that still makes a ton of sense.
Yeah,
for both teams, but they've also kind of shot that down. But I don't know. James Harden, I feel like sometimes when he isn't happy, he just plays awful. Like, remember last season when he started out in Houston and was throwing up like 10-point games, 4-point games, things like that. Seems like there's something off with him. People are saying maybe it's a little bit to do with Kyrie Irving only playing half of the time. Maybe he kind of was under the assumption that when Kyrie came back as a part-time player, he'd be like, oh, well, maybe I should get vaccinated. That's not Kyrie. Like,
right.
I mean, you and I both know that.
Yeah.
But it's weird because there were times last year where it was just James Harden. Kevin Durant had gotten hurt for a little bit, and he was still carrying this team. So I don't know if it's a mental block. I don't know if he's just kind of worn out. But either way, it's bad for the Nets because James Harden has a player option for next year. It's for $47 million, which is ridiculous. So,
yeah.
But if he doesn't come back and they don't win a title this year, which I mean, right now they're the 8 seed. So they could easily be like not even making the actual playoffs. So even if they make the playoffs, there's a good chance that like they're not gonna win the title this year. So you can kind of say, well, maybe we'll go next year and kind of give it a shot. But if Harden doesn't come back, like the Nets gave up a lot of draft picks and gave up pretty much all of their depth to get him. And if they can't even get to like the finals with him, it's going to be bad. And also, if I'm another team and I'm looking at James Harden, I'm like, right now, I'm glad that the Knicks didn't do all of this to get him. But like, if you're another team, you're looking around, you're like, well, he didn't get along with Russell Westbrook. He didn't get along with Chris Paul, who then left and almost won a title. Now he's not getting along with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. So like, when do we say that the common denominator is James Harden? But I think in the end, they're still the most talented team in the East when everyone's healthy. You could just make the argument that, well, maybe it's a lot of injuries, but other teams have injuries too. I mean, the Knicks haven't looked the same since Derrick Rose has gotten hurt.
No.
Like there's Klay Thompson was hurt for almost 2 years, and Golden State still got off to a blistering hot start. So I don't know what the best solution is for the Nets, but they got to do something. You still got another day. You could trade James Harden. I think you would have to get someone back in return, like a Ben Simmons.
Yeah.
But also, like, you can look at Portland. I mean, everybody else has gotten traded. Are you going to ask for Damian Lillard? Um,
Yeah.
Thinking of other disgruntled stars, I don't know.
Yeah, and it's funny because you mentioned Damian Lillard. He's like the opposite to me of James Harden, because he still hasn't asked to be traded. He said, he wants to stick it out. I think if they went to him and said, hey, we're going to trade you to the Knicks or a team like that, he would probably consent to it. But Harden is a he's always kind of been, and I don't want to kill him here because I do think that he changed his game when he came to the Nets, and he's still, I think he's number 2 or 3 in the league in assists this year. So, which was not his thing. He never made a shot he didn't like,
Yeah.
in Houston or even in Oklahoma City. But I thought that he really did a great job to try to fit in with the Nets. And I'm not sure what the deal is. I mean, from us, the outside looking in, just the normal fans, Ben Simmons for him, even if it's just straight up, makes perfect sense, right?
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
he hasn't played all year. The 76ers have still played very well without him. And Simmons is a defense first type of guy, which the Nets absolutely need. Especially after you saw, I didn't see much of that game last night, but I saw some of it. I mean, they weren't playing zero defense against, the Celtics. And, he's a guy that's a stopper. You could put him on any team's best player. And hopefully, and I think he needs to change the scenery for his confidence to come back. Ideally, put him somewhere far away from Philly. New York and Philly relatively close. But and Harden, I think you had mentioned this, would definitely clear the floor for Embiid. And I think him and Embiid would do some special things there. And he'd be back kind of comfortable with, the GM that loves him. So it makes perfect sense, but it just doesn't seem like it's going to happen. I don't know what it is. I mean, listen, I think on the surface, like you said, every team has had injuries or COVID and stuff like that. But losing Durant, as good as he was playing, really caught up with them in a way I don't think anybody expected. And another key injury they've had is Joe Harris, who has really for the last 4 or 5 years been one of the best shooters in the NBA, and he opens up so much things for the team. I think that's hurt them as well. But man, oh man, I mean, you just wouldn't expect a team like this to lose 9 in a row. I think what they got to hope for is as mask mandates start to come down, maybe the COVID things get loosened a little bit, and they let Kyrie play, full time. But I mean, even in the road games, he's had a couple of good games, but he's looked out of sorts, in a couple of games because because he can't play with the team all the time, which I don't think is a surprise to anybody. Then there are the New York Knicks. So, we were blessed enough to go to a couple of games in the last few weeks. Game against New Orleans where they got smoked, and then a game against Sacramento that they played extremely well from beginning to end and won. And that's been one of the few wins that they've had over the last, I think they've lost 9-11 or even 10-12, something like that after last night. And they go in spurts where they play extremely well. And you mentioned injuries. They really missed Derrick Rose, I think. But it's just been odd that, the MO with the Knicks, they'll either get a big lead early and lose it, or they'll have a big deficit early, make a comeback, and then lose. It just, they can't seem to get out of their own way. And it just seemed also that there's something underlying with them as well. And I know you watch almost every Knicks game still, even from there. What are you seeing?
Well, I don't know what it is either. I hate to think that it's already Thibodeau's kind of soured on this team a little bit, but there's a few things I don't fully understand. First of all, I feel like guys that should be getting more minutes are one, Cam Reddish, because they traded for him. But then also Obi Toppin. Every time I look at the box score, every time I'm watching a game, he always goes in and does really well, and then never plays again. I had mentioned this a couple months ago. The Knicks need to start just playing the young guys. Right now, where is this team going? even if they sneak into the playing game or get hot and are in the top 6, like this team is not better than Milwaukee. It's not better than a healthy Nets team. It's not better than Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
Not better than Miami. Like,
Yeah.
where's their ceiling? Maybe getting to the second round if things kind of fall their way.
Yeah.
Like, because that means that you need to do something. So either way, you have to increase your value of your young guys so you can trade for a superstar, or develop your young guys so that they become superstars. Either way, like guys like Alec Burks, I like Alec Burks. I think he's good. I think he could be very clutch, but he shouldn't be getting 35 minutes a night.
Like the role
Evan
player,
Fournier,
right? Yeah. Yeah.
like Fournier is obviously they paid a lot of money, so he's going to play a lot, but he
Yeah.
shouldn't be getting as many minutes.
Right.
Kemba Walker, I like Kemba Walker a lot, but he doesn't have it anymore. And I don't know. I hate also saying this too. I feel like I'm in the blow it up mode, but Julius Randle really just hasn't shown me. He's kind of more proving that last year was an anomaly, not I can build on it. And I don't know. It kind of seems like he's become very sensitive to the New York fan base,
Well,
which is probably the
yeah.
thing that scares me the most.
Yeah. Let's stay on Julius Randle for a few minutes. I agree with everything you said, and I feel terrible for Kemba Walker, especially because he's a player that you really want to root for. But I gotta say, man, his legs are just shot, and you see him in a few games. And you know the telling sign, and Walt Frazier, Clyde always says this. Telling sign of when a player is tired or injured is when their shots come up short, and his shots really come up short a lot, especially when he plays in the second half. And he's not really playing even that many minutes. And Fournier has gotten better, I think, as the year has gone on. But I agree with you; he's probably playing a little bit too much, and he probably won't play as much when Derrick Rose comes back. But let's stay on Julius Randle for a second because it's hard carrying that burden, man. And he got really anointed the superstar of the team, and he clearly through most games. I mean, you can make an argument for RJ, who's played, I think, tremendous over this year, most of this year. I think he had a bad stretch early, but Randall, he's really struggled to carry that burden. And I want to talk about the booing for a second. But before I get there, he's played extremely well on this road trip. I mean, he almost had a triple-double last night. I think he had a double-double, certainly a double-double against the Lakers and against Utah. The thing is, it's not translating to wins like it was last year, you know. But he's playing his tough play. He looks more confident. He looks more confident on the road. And I want to tie this in with Russell Westbrook for a second, because watching, I was telling this to somebody yesterday that if I wasn't a Knicks fan, that would have been one of the best games all year. You know, that Knicks-Lakers game Saturday night. Nothing else was on, you know, so I'm sure the ratings on that game was pretty high. ABC, primetime, Saturday night, New York-LA matchup, classic, you know, and ABC did a great job of showing some of the classic Knicks-Lakers matchups in the early 70s and stuff like that. But what was, it was just a phenomenal game, but the Knicks lost. So, you know, I can't, you know, but I was stunned, and I want to get your take on this. I was stunned at how much Russell Westbrook was booed almost every time he got the ball. I mean, he's just soured there. It almost sounds like the Laker fans never wanted him, because they also, like the Nets, they traded away just 4 really good players, you know, to get him. Now, Washington has dropped off. They were playing extremely well at the beginning of the year. They'll probably still get into the playoffs, but probably not without Bradley Beal, though, who's now out for the year. But I don't know if there was something. It's like, and that's his hometown. That's where he's from. And obviously went to UCLA. And to the point where he also lacked confidence, and he didn't play in the overtime. And when he got the ball, he was so hesitant to shoot, which is so uncharacteristic of him. thus, let's compare that with Julius Randle and the Knicks fans. Now, the Sacramento game, they didn't boo him at all. But the New Orleans game, I mean, by the second quarter, he was getting booed. And I felt so bad for him. But like, I didn't know Russell Westbrook was this sensitive too. Randall is ultra sensitive, but we see that a lot with the NBA players. And we talked about it a little bit. They don't have that thick skin to kind of tune it out. And I'll throw Kevin Durant in there, who I really love, who's one of the best players of all time. But now he's in this feud with Stephen A. Smith, going back and forth on Twitter. I mean, you can't ignore that stuff. I mean, his mom is now barking at Stephen A. Smith. I mean, come on. But Westbrook and Randall, I didn't think Westbrook was thin-skinned, but you can tell the booing has gotten to him. What was your take?
Yeah, I think it's wild because, like you said, a lot of people, like, there was kind of the mixed emotions when they traded for Westbrook, because everyone was very done with a lot of the guys that they traded. Just like, yeah, no, we're over everybody. They did horrible in the playoffs, although like LeBron was hurt and AD was hurt. So it was like, oh, Westbrook's there, AD's healthy, LeBron's healthy, we're winning another title. Like, that was kind of the vibe of a lot of Laker fans, or a lot of LeBron/Laker fans. And then obviously that hasn't happened. LeBron hasn't stayed healthy. Anthony Davis has missed a month. So really, like, the thought was Russell Westbrook could kind of be that guy, especially like off the bench maybe, or like kind of more playing with the second unit but still starting. And then like Carmelo Anthony honestly has played better than him, which is kind of crazy to think.
Yeah.
He's kind of had one of these odd resurgences in his career.
Yeah.
But that's another story. But like, Westbrook has never been a great shooter. Everyone kind of knows that that's a big part of, like, that's not his game.
Right.
But the guy will always get a triple-double. The guy plays hard. The guy hustles. And his energy is kind of supposed to be the thing that kind of helps fuel everything. But it seems like the Laker fans have kind of gotten impatient with his bad shooting. Them chanting "Don't shoot" when he's at the 3-point line is crazy.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And like, look, fans can do whatever they want. Like, fans will boo, fans will cheer, fans will chant MVP one week and chant cuss words the next week. Like, that's gonna happen. But as the athlete, as the guy getting paid millions of dollars to do this, you have to think of ways to just kind of let it brush you off. Like, I mean, the Bible says if someone doesn't receive you well, wipe the dust off your feet.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of the NBA players today aren't really that good at just kind of wiping the dust off their feet, or like not letting words affect them. Like you had mentioned Kevin Durant. He tends to have beef with everyone, whether it's Stephen A. Smith now. Remember last year, Michael Rappaport and him had like a very public exchange.
Why would you worry about what Michael Rappaport? No shot to him. But why would you worry about what he's saying? I don't get it.
Yeah, but I agree though. Like, I just don't understand why you can't just say, okay, well, yeah, they hate me, fine, I'll prove them wrong. But it really has gotten into Westbrook's head, and they need him, especially now. There's no trading Russell Westbrook. He's also making $40 million plus this year, and I believe has an option for next year.
Yeah.
Like, no one's taking that contract.
Yeah.
And also, like, in order to make that work, you'd have to give up like several pieces. Like, you think the Knicks would give up, say, Julius Randle, Evan Fournier, and Kemba Walker for Russell Westbrook? Like, that's not gonna happen.
No. No. Yeah.
So, like, the Lakers, I hate to say it this way, but the Lakers are kind of stuck with it. But I think you have to design it so that he works best to his talents. Like, surround him with shooters, surround him with guys that can spread the floor. Don't clog up the lane, because that guy loves going down the lane.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also, yeah, like, the fans boo him, fine. Like, I can't tell someone not to boo. But Westbrook, you just got to shake it off. Julius Randle too. You got to shake it off.
Yeah. it's easy for us to say it, man, but I gotta say, there's been so many athletes over the years that have that thick skin that shake it off, and they've got to get to that place. I don't know where the Knicks and Nets go from here as we wrap up the NBA stuff, but I'll say this, and I want you to comment real quick on this. The greatness of LeBron James is just at 37 years old now, I'm wondering if he's going to be a little bit like Tom Brady. For him to come in and come back after an injury to come into that game, and I believe he got a triple double, but he's definitely the reason that they won. And just the way he passes and how he sees the floor, and he's getting all these other guys involved. It's just, and some of these guys he's getting involved and he's setting them up for great passes are kind of marginal players at best.
Yeah.
And yet, they're thriving because of him, which is why a lot of players over the years have wanted to play with him. You kind of see that. Whereas a lot of players, no shot on Michael Jordan, but he's so tough on other players. The Bulls never made that many moves because players would be like, yeah, I don't particularly want to go there, and get yelled at, And I'm sure LeBron is tough on players, but not like Jordan was. But LeBron just knows how to set players up. He knows when he needs to shoot and take over, and he's still like unstoppable when he drives. I mean, what's your final thought on what you saw from LeBron James on Saturday?
It's amazing that he's doing what he's doing in year 19. You look at, obviously Jordan didn't play as long, but towards the end of his career, he looked really just shot. Yeah. A lot of players have looked really shot at this point. But LeBron's still it kind of like with Tom Brady, where you think, oh, he could probably play like another 5 years if he wanted to.
Yeah.
So long as his body kind of holds up. He's still one of the top 5 players in the NBA, which
doubt.
is ridiculously crazy.
Yeah.
I also had seen a thing that sometime within the next week or so, he's probably going to end up with the most total points ever between regular season and postseason. The guy has played.
Yeah,
that's a lot of mileage.
Yeah. I mean, every year he's played deep into the postseason. Every year. I mean, except the one year when he got first year with the Lakers when he got hurt. Other than that, and early in his career, but other than that, every year, I mean, they're either in the conference finals, playing these 7-game series. He's got a lot of mileage. All right, let's just shift over to the Super Bowl. I can't believe the team I picked in the beginning of the season is in the Super Bowl. And so, what's your pick? What's your take here?
This is a tough one for me because for me, I really, really want to see the Bengals win. There's even though it's Cincinnati, not Cleveland, there's still a little bit of hype because it's Ohio. So I think people would get excited. I did actually read that the Cincinnati Public School District has already closed school the day after the Super Bowl.
Amazing, yeah.
Which I think is really funny. I don't know. It kind of seems because the Rams are obviously the better team. Matt Stafford has shown that he's a great quarterback, just was in a bad situation for a while. They still have great stars on defense between Von Miller, Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey. Odell has had quite the resurgence in the latter half of his year with the Rams. But part of me says maybe I'll still just go with the Bengals. Something interesting I read. Joe Burrow and Matt Stafford are on opposite ends of the spectrum. No number one overall quarterback has made the Super Bowl in their second year as their first time. But also no number one overall quarterback has made the Super Bowl for the first time as late as Matt Stafford in his 13th year.
Oh, wow.
So they're on opposite ends.
Yeah.
But it's so much fun. Honestly, I'm looking forward to just having a fun game. But if I'm going to pick the Bengals for the bias Ohio in me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love Boomer Esiason. He's a Long Island guy, New York guy. I've always liked him as an announcer too. And there's a big part of me that wants to pick Cincinnati, but I think this Stafford story and how the Rams have pulled it all together, and I think their coach is really, really good. I think he's got a good combination of the technical stuff, but he seems like he can relate to every player.
Yeah.
Aaron Donald is so good at his position, and I think Odell has gotten his second win here, and Cooper Kupp. I mean, a historic season. There's just so many things going for the Rams. I don't think anybody would be surprised if the Bengals won, but I got to pick the Rams, and I'm actually going to give a score. I'm going to say 31-30 Rams. I think it's going to be a close game throughout. I think it's going to be decided late. I think the Bengals will make a run and not get a 2-point conversion or something like that, and the Rams will win by a point or so. But I think it's going to be a great game. I mean, it'll be disappointing to an extent if this historic playoff ended with kind of a bust in the Super Bowl, But Super Bowls of late have been very, very good, very competitive, except the last one the Rams was in, right? The Patriots spanked them. And last year wasn't crazy competitive either, especially in the second half. But for the most part, when I was a kid, the Super Bowl used to be a bust almost all the time. It was rare that you got a great game, and I used to think it was part a 2-week layoff, but it's been, great games of late. So I think this will be, an excellent game. I think the Bengals will show up. I don't think the bright lights are going to bother them. I do think the Rams will feel some pressure being the home team, but that it's second year in a row, which is amazing. But I think that's a little bit overrated because it's not all Rams fans that's going to be there. It's people from Super Bowl tickets. Forget it. It's all sorts of people that buy those. So, but they don't have to travel. They're right there in LA. They can sleep in their own beds at night. So, I guess to an extent it's an advantage. But I'm looking forward to a good game.
Yeah, I'll give a score just for the sake of it. I'll also make a bold prediction here. So Nate McPherson will have another game-winning field goal here, 27-24.
What's the score?
27-24. Also, I think Sean McVay is going to get too fancy at one point and do something he shouldn't.
Okay.
Whether it's going for a fourth down, going for a 2-pointer, something.
All right. Let's stay NFL for just a few seconds, and then we'll jump to the nicknames. The Brian Flores lawsuit. Kind of still like a little bit of a black cloud, I think, no pun intended, right? But a little bit of a cloud over this week, right? But Lovie Smith wound up, getting the job in Houston, and Mike McDaniel, who I don't know, biracial candidate, got the job in Miami, and Dennis Allen got the job in New Orleans over Eric Bieniemy. And, it's a shame Eric Bieniemy, I think 15 interviews he's had. I think I read that yesterday. But I have to say, I think Dennis Allen was probably the right choice in New Orleans because, New Orleans is not broke and Sean Payton didn't get fired, So I think having that succession of somebody, getting promoted like Lovie Smith did, and I thought Lovie Smith was still at Illinois. I didn't realize that, he's been their coordinator for the last year. But even though it's the enemy that didn't get the job, I think it was the right hire with Dennis Allen, to replace Sean Payton because it just, the New Orleans is a good quarterback away from, being an excellent team again. I mean, they were still really good this year. And I think, why mess with that, and just promote from within. I thought that was the right call. Trouble is, the NFL has had this terrible track record. So, people right away will say, oh my gosh, how did they not hire, Bieniemy or another candidate? But I think they did exactly the right thing. What was your take this past week on some of these last coaching hires?
Yeah, I think I'll stick with Bieniemy for a second. First of all, it's obvious that he's one of the token Rooney Rule guys. 15 interviews, but something I'd watched an interview earlier in the week with Tony Dungy. He was on somebody's show, kind of talking about how he's dealt with the Rooney Rule and interviews and such. And one of the things that he said that was kind of interesting, and I think it applies very closely with Bieniemy, is that like it's really hard to interview well when you're still coaching your team. Because a lot of these head coaching hires have still happened while other teams are playing playoff games. And he had said that like he went on 2 different interviews with guys while he was still whatever, I think defensive coordinator. And like while and they said like, oh yeah, he didn't really interview well. Well, like, yeah, because he was coaching. He said if he had had time, if like
Yeah.
he was not doing anything else, then absolutely he would go through like the roster, go through the draft picks, and kind of say like what he would do differently and everything like that. So his third interview, which ended up, I believe this was the one that got him the job in Tampa Bay. Um, like his team was out of the playoffs, he was free, and he had a great um interview and then was hired. So like I feel like a lot of times maybe a guy like the enemy is passed up because people are like, well, he's not really interviewing well. And now he has that reputation. So
Yeah.
like everyone's like, well, he's just not that good. But maybe if you hired him in March as opposed to middle of January when his team is going to his 4th straight conference title game, it might be different.
Yeah, they're in the playoffs every year. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the Lovie Smith hires is a good one. Lovie Smith is actually now the first Black coach to get 3 different chances in the NFL.
Yeah.
Which I think is cool.
Yeah.
It does kind of seem like both him and McDaniels is kind of like well, no, we are actually hiring minorities. So it looks like maybe the Brian Flores lawsuit is already making some headway there. Because remember with Houston, they were looking at guys like Josh McCown, who's never actually like coached at any level. So
Yeah.
I'm glad that they went with someone that like has experience.
Yeah.
Houston's going to be a weird team anyway because you still don't know if you're going to have Deshaun Watson. Hopefully you do if you're Lovie Smith. If not, it looks like it'll be a rebuild. Either way, it's probably going to be a rebuild. And also, they probably shouldn't have fired their head coach anyway.
Yeah.
Guy kind of got a raw deal.
No, I know. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't really know a ton about the Dolphins coach though. Like I know he was with the Niners. From what I've seen, a lot of the reactions, a lot of people like him. A lot of people think he's a really good like football guy. So hopefully he'll do well there too. Hopefully he can do something with Tua. But still, it also looks like Brian Flores has probably torched his chances of getting another head coaching position because Flores was one of the favorites for Houston as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're probably not going to hire someone that's in the middle of suing your league. So,
but that's and that's a sad situation, right? Where you just because you speak up, now you might not get another shot. And I think he realizes that. Just like I think it's important that we're always fair, right? And one of the things that hasn't been talked about now, listen, I think you and I were both clear. There's problems with this, right? The NFL has not been great at this, and there's certainly some teams, more than one, right, that will just bring in an African American just to satisfy, the Rooney Rule. But if I do look at the Dolphins, their GM is African American, Chris Greer, and if you dig a little bit in, did him and Flores really disagree on A, no, should they go after Deshaun Watson? B, should we be playing Tua? Was it a philosophical disagreement? Because you have to start to think why on the surface a really good coach who had success 10-6, 9-8 with a decent team, right? The Dolphins aren't the most talented team in the league, but he got the most out of them. Were there some things that they just disagreed on and they wanted to part ways, right? But then you have all the other stuff with the owner. Hey, I'm going to give you $100,000 a game, to lose, and we want you to meet Deshaun Watson on my yacht, and so there's some other things there, but I don't think anybody has mentioned that Chris Greer is African American. I remember, and you know how I looked that up? because I was like, career. I wonder if he's related to the guy that was the GM for the Patriots for a long time. And sure enough, that's his brother. You know, and their dad was like a hockey player or a hockey executive or something like that for years. One of the few African Americans for a long time. And so I don't know. I think, you know, just like the Giants situation, I think you have to dig in. You know, you have Tiki Barber really taking up for the Giants organization. And you have, you know, Stephen A. Smith, who, you know, I like Stephen A. Smith, but, you know, you can't get on national television and say the Giants are the only team that never hired a black coach. As soon as he said that, I was like, that's not true. I'm sure that's not true, you know? And sure enough, it's like 13 other teams that's never had an African-American coach. So, but yet the Giants also had an African-American GM for a long time, you know, with Jerry Reese, and he did an excellent job, you know? His time just kind of ran out here, you know? So I think there's a couple of sides there. It doesn't mean that this doesn't mean to be brought to the forefront. I don't think Brian Flores or Eric Bieniemy should have gotten the New Orleans job, right? But there were a lot of other jobs that they probably should have been considered for that they just got passed up on, like, you know, like the Vikings and a few other teams that I thought they would have been perfect for, you know? So
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, nicknames. We've been doing this the last few weeks. I'll start because I love you. I love when you do these and you end. I've got 4 really quick ones this week because I mentioned at the end last week that a lot of the great all-time players didn't have, you know, nicknames. And I immediately, you mentioned, well, Air Jordan, you know, and I started to think, okay, here's 3 all-time greats that I think had great nicknames. Karl Malone, the mailman. I love that. He's always delivering, the mailman. I love that. That was a great nickname. Dr. J, Julius Erving, you know, the doctor is always operating, you know, he's always on call, always operating. Julius Erving, one of the greatest players of all time, obviously. Dr. J, I think, was just a great nickname. See, nobody else could have that nickname now, right? I can't be Dr. K or somebody like that, you know. That's one you got to retire, right? And then Hank Aaron, you know, Hammer and Hank. I love that. You know, he had a great nickname too. But here's one of my favorites because I just think it's a funny nickname, Mookie. And so Mookie Wilson and Mookie Betts. You know, I think you can have several Mookies. We'll probably see more Mookies, you know, down the road. Yeah. But I think that's a great thing. And obviously those were nicknames that they got when they were kids. Because I don't even know what's Mookie Betts' real name. Do you know?
We'll see if I can find it.
Yeah, and I forgot what Mookie Wilson's real name was. You know, I don't even remember. And because they never say, I have no idea what Mookie Betts' real name is. I forgot.
Marcus Lynn Betts.
Okay, so he could have been Marcus Betts. He is Marcus Betts, but that could have been the same as a player. But obviously, he had that nickname since he was a kid. All right, what you got?
All right. Since it's Super Bowl weekend, I have 3 NFL ones.
Okay.
All kind of recent. Calvin Johnson, Megatron.
That's a great name. Yeah.
Which apparently they just kind of started calling him that while they were practicing. Transformers had just come out. And then he was like, wait, Megatron's the bad guy. He's like, okay, well, I'll be the bad guy to the defense. So he kind of just stuck with that.
Great.
The guy that lives in infamy for not doing what he should have been doing in this play, Marshawn Lynch, beast mode. Talking about when he should have been rushing the ball instead they throw the interception.
Oh my gosh, one of the worst plays of all time.
Yeah. And then a guy, Bengals connection, kind of what he's known for the most. Chad Johnson, Ocho Cinco. Which is not how you say 85 is numbered, but that's he embraced it so much that he made it his last name. Wow, I love those. And you know, Calvin Johnson, Hall of Fame player now, retired early because of he felt like, you know, concussions and stuff like that. But Chad Johnson, Ocho Cinco, very underrated receiver because he was a bit of a showman and he liked to talk a lot.
forget, man, this guy would get over 100 catches every year, well over 1,000 yards. And he was always clutch. He would come up with a big play, with Cincy. I've forgotten that he was Ocho's. And didn't he legally change his name to that or something like that?
Yeah, the NFL wouldn't allow him to put it on his jersey unless it was his last name. So he changed his last name to Ocho Cinco.
Changed his last name. Wow. Yeah, he's a character. Oh, those are good ones. Those are good ones. All right, take us home.
All right, this is Kenny Squared End
Kenny.
with Sports on the Positive Tip. Enjoy the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yay, Ohio.
Lots to talk about next week with the Super Bowl. All right. Take care, guys.